We're following more breaking news right now. In a brand new interview with Howard Stern, President Biden was asked whether he planned to debate his predecessor, the former president, Donald Trump. Listen to this, his response. This is Biden.
I don't know if you're going to debate your opponent.
I am somewhere. I don't know when. I'm happy to debate him.
Let's bring in our White House correspondent, MJ Lee. She's joining us right now. And Elena Trine is joining us with more on this as well. MJ, what more are you hearing from the Biden administration and from the Biden campaign, for that matter, on these comments from the president that he's ready to debate Trump?
Well, Wolf, up until now, President Biden had never given a definitive answer to the question of whether he would be willing to debate Donald Trump. And in this lengthy interview with Howard Stern earlier today, he said he doesn't know when this will happen or where it will happen. But he said, quote, "I'm happy to debate him," as we just heard. This comes, I should note, on the heels of a dozen or so news organizations, including CNN, earlier this month, writing an open letter urging both Donald Trump and President Biden to participate in televised debates before November's election day. Trump, of course, for his part, who skipped the Republican primary debates, has said recently that he is willing to debate President Biden anytime and anywhere. And I think it's just worth pointing out, given the focus of some of our coverage today and in recent days, we're at a moment where President Biden's White House and the campaign are sort of trying to figure out and confronting the reality of finding ways to really break through, as there has been a lot of overwhelming focus on the Trump trials. Advisors I've spoken to say that he is continuing to govern, he is continuing to campaign, and that is going to continue. But it is interesting that he decided to have this lengthy sit down with Howard Stern, who obviously has a very big audience.
Yeah, it was very interesting indeed. I want to go to Elena right now. You've been covering the Trump campaign for us. Elena, what's the reaction, at least so far, from this news that President Biden has announced he's happy to go ahead and have a debate with Trump before the election?
Well, shortly after the interview, Wolf, one of Donald Trump's top advisors, Chris LaCivita, said, "Let's set it up." And then moments ago, we heard from the former president directly. Currently, they are on a lunch break in his trial, and he posted to Truth Social. I'm going to read you part of that post. He said, quote, "Crooked Joe Biden just announced that he's willing to debate. Everyone knows he doesn't really mean it. But in case he does, I say, in all caps, anywhere, anytime, any place." The post went on to say that he suggested Monday evening, Tuesday evening, or Wednesday evening at my rally in Michigan. And then later in the post, he said, "In fact, let's do the debate at the courthouse tonight on national television. I'll wait around." So, Wolf, as you can see, this has become a bit of a shtick for Donald Trump and his team. We're told, actually, by some of the poll reporters at the courthouse in Manhattan, that another one of Donald Trump's top advisors, Jason Miller, had actually handed out printed copies of this Truth Social post while they're on this lunch break. So clearly they're trying to get attention for this. And part of that shtick as well, Wolf, has been at many of Donald Trump's most recent rallies, he's put up a podium on stage, which is supposed to symbolize an empty spot for Biden, where they've really been criticizing Joe Biden for not willing to come out thus far and say, let's do this, let's debate. Now, I also want to remind you that earlier this month, we did see a memo from two of Donald Trump's campaign managers, Susie Wiles and Chris LaCivita. They had called on the Presidential Commission on Debates to host more and earlier debates. So this is really something that they have been pushing for. They think, from my conversations with them, that having Donald Trump and Joe Biden on stage side by side would be a good contrast for their campaign. Wolf?
Very interesting indeed. And we're just told that Trump is now back in the courtroom getting ready for the next round. Just was seen walking back in. This video from moments ago. Elena Trine and MJ Lee, guys, thank you very, very much. We're told the jury has now re-entered the courtroom. The former president, his team are also back in court after a lunch break. And we may soon learn who will be the second witness called in this truly historic trial. Prosecutors will finish, first of all, questioning David Pecker. He's the former publisher of the National Enquirer, who testified that he killed off stories to help presidential candidate Donald Trump. I want to bring back my panel right now, and Laura Coates is joining us right now. Laura, what's your main takeaway so far of what we've seen, the testimony so far today?
Well, what's so important, you're talking about a witness like this. It's your leadoff witness, kind of like your leadoff hitter. You want to make sure that you're going to maintain their credibility throughout. And this is over the course of several days now. Since Monday, we've been hearing from David Pecker. Of course, we had a couple of days off. But if you're the prosecution, you want to make sure the credibility is intact, that they are a part of a jigsaw puzzle, that this witness can't get you everything, but certain parts of it, the catch and kill scheme, and not try to have the cross-examination undermine any of that. So far, they've tried to land some punches with inconsistent statements and pointing out documents in the prosecution agreement to not prosecute him in that context, but they haven't landed fully a blow that has undermined fatally his credibility. And remember, you can't go by and judge David Pecker based on the type of articles they published in the Inquirer. The Inquirer is not on the stand. It's not on trial. What matters to this jury is, do they believe the statements about the conversations that he had with the person who is the defendant, Donald Trump? And so far, we're seeing a lot of this continue to play out.
And it's interesting, just now, one of the prosecutors, Joshua Steinglass, said to Pecker, I'm going to try not to keep you here too much longer.
And it's not a joke. He should not at this point. And just to underscore what cross-examination is versus redirect versus what comes after. Cross-examination is where the opposing party picks apart and leads the witness. And then on redirect, you clean up whatever bad dirt got dredged up on cross-examination. But, as Ellie had said, maybe in the last hour, you want to narrow down over the course of these three things. And by the time of the redirect, the attorney who's doing it should really only ask a few questions. What the prosecution probably needs to do here is just end on one clear, understandable point that you can send David Pecker home with and have the jury thinking this was the point of David Pecker's testimony. You got to end on a question, did you see Donald Trump direct X or Y or Z? Yes, period, full stop, and then get out of there.
Well, the whole point is that Donald Trump got special treatment, that it wasn't standard operating procedure, that you don't normally pay someone like Karen McDougal $150,000. And I think they've been driving that point home, that this was a conspiracy that was hatched with Donald Trump, Michael Cohen, and David Pecker, and that this was out of the ordinary. Even though, they did stuff to protect Arnold Schwarzenegger and whatever, they never went to these lengths to protect someone as they did with Donald Trump.
And it's easy to overdo it here and sort of gild the lily with the questioning. At a certain point, it's time to pack up and go home. The jury just got back from lunch. They're likely going to start getting tired. It's Friday. They are as mindful of the clock as anyone else, and it's just worth it to wrap up, cut your losses, and go home.
Going back to the Wall Street Journal article, though, published on November 4th, 2016, I think this is around the time when they're exposing, I think, the conversation between Trump and Pecker, where he's irritated that something has gotten out. He's accusing Pecker at one point of having someone on his team leak the information. He ends the call by not saying goodbye, which was unusual for Trump to do, he says, probably the beginning of the end. But again, this is all going back to the timing of it and why it was important not to have this come out yet.
Yeah. I'm wondering, who do you think, Ellie, the next witness will be, the second witness in this historic trial, after they wrap up with Pecker?
So I have no idea, but more relevantly, Donald Trump's team has no idea. And that is really unusual because ordinarily, the last thing that happens in a trial day is the judge says to the prosecution, okay, prosecution, who are you calling tomorrow? Who are we going to have on the stand tomorrow? Often it's more in advance than that. You have to say who's coming in next week. But Donald Trump has himself to blame for his attorney's lack of visibility here, because when his attorneys asked for that notice, the judge said, not right now, not the way you've been tweeting about witnesses, not the way you've been violating the gag order. Now, if I'm Donald Trump's attorneys, you need that. You need to know who's coming. You need to know who you're prepping for. I mean, they have a witness list that's dozens of witnesses long. How do you know who to prep for? And so I think what I would do is wait for the judge to give his gag order ruling, which is going to be bad for Donald Trump. I would say, lesson learned. We now have clarity, and I really, Judge, need to know. I mean, defense lawyers always need to know that.